they have really not had to face any conflict over the last many, many years. So, they when they also came in, they, it was thought that they are just going to walk into Ukraine and occupy Kiev. It would be a matter of, operation of 10 days, 2 weeks, 20 days or something. But we've seen that it's now been going on for more than 2.5 years, now close to 3 years next February. So obviously, it has sent out some message as far as the training fitness of the Russian soldiers, as well as the equipment that they have been using. As far as the North Koreans are concerned, you're right. They have also not had any, either war experience. Training, of course, I'm sure all these soldiers do have, but their mettle will really be tested on the battlefield here now. And I'm sure they would have undergone, adequate training in Russia, so that, as far as interoperability of the forces is concerned, that is maintained. They're not really acting at cross purposes. So I think we'll really have to wait and see. It'll be difficult to give any, judgment, any significant judgment.
That particular report, Ambassador, you talk about interoperability. That particular report goes on to say that they're going to be donning the Russian military fatigues, but essentially be working out on their own as discrete units. Like you pointed out, it is still inside the Russian land. So, the global voices won't necessarily say that they're violating international law. But then again, it could be, sort of a challenge for the Russian military itself. Am I making a point here, or am I reading too much between the lines?
No, I definitely, meaning it's a new ball game altogether. Getting another army and trying to integrate into your own forces. I think it's definitely a new ball game altogether. It'll be problematic. We had seen even when Yevgeny Prigozhin was there, and his troops, and they were coming from sort of, different parts. Even for them, it was difficult to, gel in easily as far as the Russian army, armed forces, military is concerned. So here, definitely there'll be challenges, but we'll really have to wait and see as to how it goes on and for how long this, all of this can continue, because, now that Trump has come, I'm sure he's going to make some serious efforts and attempt to at least have a ceasefire, if not, call an end to the conflict, call an end to the war.
Donald Trump is a different aspect altogether, Ambassador. I'm going to touch on it in just a few minutes. With Pyongyang, it's always certain that there is some sort of a barter that's going on. The implications of North Korea now potentially joining war as we know it on the ground, what does this entail in terms of the barter? Could we see, Russian missiles, anti-tank ballistic missiles, those grenade launchers being supplied to North Korea? Or is there more to it than what the normal eye can see here?
Yeah, I think that, Russia will act in a manner that will safeguard and protect its own interests. It is not going to sort of, as some people were saying that, as far as the missile technology is concerned, as far as some of the other sophisticated technology, I don't think it's going to be for the asking as far as North Korea is concerned. North Korea might make requests, might make demands, etc. And of course, now it will be in a much stronger position to, to ensure that its requests are given serious thought and serious consideration. But still, it is not a given that all that it asks for is going to be given by Russia, because Russia is obviously the bigger power, that holds an advantage over North Korea, and it cannot, call the shots. It cannot allow it to call the shots, as would have been the case if, as you mentioned right at the beginning, that, Chinese soldiers, if they had been inducted and they had been asked to join, then, China would have had a big IOU, from Russia, and it could have sort of, demanded something that would have been quite unreasonable. But here, as far as North Korea is concerned, it's up to a limit that it can go to get its demands, its requests satisfied.
Pertinent points, Ambassador. Do stay on with us, Ambassador. Just to brush up the memory of the viewers here, because just a short while ago, in the earlier days, Ukrainian forces launched a surprise military incursion into Russia's Kursk region, a strategically significant area known for the Soviet Union's crucial World War II victory over Nazi Germany in 1943. Now, this offensive, which began on the 6th of August, was planned in secrecy, masking troop movements as reinforcements or military exercises. Unlike Russia's heavily fortified defenses in regions like Donbass and Kursk, this Kursk area was less prepared for such an attack. In an unexpected move, President Vladimir Putin cut off Kursk's acting governor, Andrei Smirnov, after Smirnov revealed that 28 villages had been captured and over 2,000 Russians were missing in Ukrainian occupied territories. The operation was aimed at disrupting Russia's plans to target Ukraine's Sumy region and pushing Russia's artillery and aviation away from the border. Now, while the operation has boosted Ukraine's military position, of course, the drone warfare continues on both sides, and the military's morale as well, it has also undermined Western calls for peace talks, strengthening President Zelensky's diplomatic standing. Though it hasn't yet forced Russia to withdraw troops from Donbass, the entire operation is still having notable political and psychological impacts. The outcome of the Battle of Kirks is still unfolding, but Ukraine's short-term gains and Russia's losses are certainly clear. Again, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar continues to be with us. Ambassador, North Korea now fighting in Kirks. Once this operation goes through, could we see the North Korean troops staying on there and their role getting wider and wider in this particular battle?
Yeah, that is what it would appear, because after all, they have not come here for a small operation or a short operation that they are here. And
seems like an exchange program. Seems like an exchange program.
Yeah, something of that sort. It cannot be, because an exchange program would mean that the Russian troops would also be going to the other side. But Russia doesn't have any troops to spare just at this moment. But, for them, if they are, coming here, and, once this operation is over, and I am reasonably confident that, the Ukrainian forces will not be able to hold on to their position in Kursk for, very long, because, they're surrounded on all sides by the Russian territory. So, Russia has that advantage of sending in its forces. And, I'm surprised that, the whole thing started in 6th of August. So it's been about 5 odd months that it's been, that the territory of more than 1,500 square kilometers has been under the occupation in the possession of Ukraine. And that in terms of its image and, its reputation, I think it's had a huge cost as far as Russia is concerned, but it has not really made any attempt and effort so far to evict the Ukrainian troops from there, which means that it has not had, in terms of the numbers, although it is said that it has not withdrawn any forces from the eastern part of Ukraine. But it is quite clear that over this period from August till now, it has not felt confidence. It didn't have the numbers to be able to go in and try to regain its lost territory in this Kursk region. It's a part of Russia, and I think it is, in my view, for another country to come and occupy, it is quite a humiliation for Russia for it to continue for so many months.
All right, Ambassador. Ambassador, a pertinent point that you've raised over there. Now Russia is looking at this multi-pronged war, a multi-front war, because like you pointed out, the eastern area, they haven't had to take army away from there, and now you've amassing these troops on the western part as well. How soon? Because Russian military is already clawing back at that Ukrainian, territory. It's already started clawing back. With the North Koreans now part of this troop, do you think the process of clawing back is going to be faster and quicker?
Yeah, once I think the Kursk operations are over, then of course, all these 50,000, whatever is left of them, they'll be able to come to the eastern, to the western Russian and the eastern Ukrainian sectors and, start their operations, start fighting. But I am, and I think the whole world is watching as to what Mr. Trump is going to do in the meanwhile, because, he has to make some moves. He's said it so often that he's going to stop wars. and on the first day he's going to stop this Ukrainian conflict.
How, Ambassador?
So,
How is that going to be possible? You've got a Donald Trump. Already reports are contradicting each other. Kremlin says there was no call between Putin and Donald Trump. You've got Washington Post and several Western media saying that there was a phone call that did in fact take place. Now, North Korea is supporting Russia. Ukraine would expect NATO to come in. And Donald Trump has said it time and again that we want the NATO nations to reciprocate the aid that US is meting out to them. It's going to stop. What do you think is going to happen on that front?
You know, as far as the involvement of the North Korean troops is concerned, I don't think that that is provocation enough for NATO troops to come in, because NATO doesn't want to get involved in directly. You know, it doesn't want to put boots on the ground, because, you know, that would be a sure shot, indication of the start of the Third World War. Because if NATO is there, then as far as Russia is concerned, it's no holds barred, you know, everything sort of goes up in smoke. So I don't think that this instigation, this provocation is strong enough for NATO also to come in. I think the only provocation will be if Russia starts shooting, firing, bombing any of the NATO countries, Poland, Baltic states, etc. That could be provocation that would merit a response, but not definitely.
I personally feel, Ambassador, we're far away from that. And my own limited opinion is also that, you know, the cost of the war is a major factor. A war actually ends once you can't afford that particular war. Last question to you. How do you think this is going to play out? We've got all these factors playing. Last 30 seconds, Ambassador. How do you think this is going to play out, the Russian and the North Koreans on the west side?
Yeah, you know, first, as far as the eastern Ukraine thing is concerned, you know, that is really grinding to a stalemate. So, you know, I do sincerely hope that, you know, when Mr. Trump decides to come in, you know, no more operations, at least the active conflict there is contained. As far as Kursk region is concerned, I think, in my view, it is only a matter of time. How long it will take, I think we'll really have to wait and see. The preparedness and the capacity of the Russian and the North Korean forces, it's only a matter of time before they are able to evict the Ukrainian forces from Kursk. But, you know, I think Ukraine has also mentioned that they had a limited objective. They wanted to sort of, you know, wean away some of the troops from the eastern sector of Ukraine. It's a moot point whether they have been successful in that or not, but at least it has given a body blow to the image and to the reputation of Russia that, you know, foreign troops have been on their territory for 6 months and they have really not been able to do anything about it.
All right, then. We're going to leave it there, Ambassador. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, many thanks for joining with us here on News9 and help us out with your insightful inputs. Only a matter of time is what the Ambassador tells us at this point in time. But today, the Kremlin officially denied reports that United States' President-elect Donald Trump recently spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Both the Washington Post and Reuters had reported that Trump urged Vladimir Putin to avoid escalating the war in Ukraine, citing anonymous sources. But Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov was quick to call these reports completely untrue and quote-unquote pure fiction, stating that there has been no conversation with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Now, Peskov also took the opportunity to criticize media outlets for publishing unverified stories, even saying that respected publications sometimes get things wrong. When asked if a Putin-Trump call was expected soon, Peskov said there were no concrete plans yet. Now, this denial comes as Ukraine's war with Russia hits a critical phase. Russian forces are advancing, and Western leaders are considering opinions and options to end the conflict. Trump, during his campaign, claimed that he could bring peace to Ukraine in just 24 hours if elected to the White House, but hasn't shared specifics on how he would end up doing that. Just last week, Vladimir Putin did extend congratulations to Donald Trump and said Moscow was open to future dialogue under Donald Trump's leadership. But tensions are rising. Russia recently warned that any strikes deep into territory by Ukraine, especially using Western-supplied missiles, would mark a major escalation in the conflict. Vladimir Putin even warned that NATO's involvement in such attacks would mean that NATO and the United States are directly participating in the war. The Kremlin noted that European leaders seem nervous about Trump's election, yet they continue supplying Ukraine with weapons, aiming, they say, to see the war through. And while the Kremlin insists that they will continue their special military operation until Russia's goals are achieved, Ukraine and its allies view the conflict as a clear, dangerous assault on Ukraine's sovereignty, one that could embolden autocratic regimes globally if Russia does go on to succeed. The stakes are only climbing as both sides remain locked in a fight that is now seen as more than just a regional dispute. This has become a broader clash over influence and ideals in today's world.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin in recent days. A source familiar with the call told Reuters on Sunday that Trump advised Putin not to escalate the Ukraine war. The billionaire also spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday. Ukraine's foreign ministry said it was not informed in advance of the call between Trump and Putin and therefore could neither endorse or object to it. The Russian embassy in Washington did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Trump will take office in January after winning the November 5th presidential election. His call with Putin comes as President Joe Biden plans to urge Trump not to abandon Kyiv. Biden told reporters he will meet with Trump on Wednesday at the White House. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said on Sunday that Biden's top message will be his commitment to ensure a peaceful transfer of power. He will also talk to Trump about what's happening in Europe, in Asia, and the Middle East. Congress appropriated over $174 billion to support Ukraine under Biden, according to the Government Accountability Office. Trump has been critical of the scale of that military and financial support, and he has said Putin would have never invaded Ukraine if he had been president at the time. On the campaign trail, he vowed to end the war quickly if elected, without saying how. He told Reuters Ukraine may have to cede territory to reach a peace agreement, something the Ukrainians reject and Biden has never suggested.
Well, we're slipping into a quick commercial breather here. But on the other side, top global developments continue. Keep it with News9.
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe. A new perspective awaits. B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
Welcome back. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell sought to reassure Ukraine of Europe's unwavering support days after Donald Trump's election win cast uncertainty over its war effort.
This support remains unwavering. This support is absolutely needed for you to continue defending yourself against Russia's aggression. We need faster deliveries and fewer self-imposed red lines. Fewer self-imposed red lines. Because time is measured in human lives and the extent of destruction. Every day that we lose discussing about how much support are we going to provide, this is measured on Ukrainians losing lives.
Well, so the entire world does have its focus on what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. Ahead of Donald Trump's January inauguration, British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron are stepping up efforts to bolster Ukraine's position in its war with Russia, with Trump having been critical of US aid to Ukraine and his past praise of Russian President Vladimir Putin. There's growing concern that he might cut aid or push Ukraine to surrender territory to end the war. Any such surrender would be unacceptable to Europe. So Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron met today to discuss ways to strengthen Ukraine's stance. They aim to convince outgoing President Joe Biden to ramp up aid before Trump takes office, including potentially giving Ukraine the green light to use long-range Storm Shadow missiles deep inside Russia. Currently, Joe Biden has limited missile strikes to border areas, but sources say he may now be open to allowing the deeper strikes, making it more difficult for Donald Trump to reverse this decision once he is in the White House. Meanwhile, US President-elect Donald Trump, he announced that Tom Homan, the former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, will be responsible for overseeing the country's borders in his upcoming administration. Here's a quick report on Trump's border czar. Take a look.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump continued to fill the roster for his administration over the weekend. The billionaire on Sunday tapped Tom Homan to be in charge of the country's borders. Homan is the former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. He served in Trump's administration for a year and a half during his first term and has also been considered a contender for Secretary of Homeland Security. Trump made cracking down on illegal immigration a central element of his campaign. In a post on Truth Social, he said that as border czar, Homan will oversee the deportation of illegal immigrants. The president-elect is in the process of meeting with potential candidates for positions in his administration before he takes office in January. Reuters reported Friday that Trump met with Scott Bessent. The prominent investor is a potential nominee for U.S. Treasury Secretary. CNN reported on Sunday that Trump had offered Republican representative and fierce Trump ally Elise Stefanik the job of U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Trump's team, in a statement, neither confirmed nor denied the report, while Stefanik could not be immediately reached.
And it's going to be absolutely interesting to understand how the Republican administration is going to shape up. Donald Trump's vision for his first day back in office is ambitious, even unprecedented, many say. He's pledging sweeping changes across the board, promising to do it all right out of the gate. First, he's zeroing in on mass deportations. Trump has said he launched what he calls the largest deportation program in American history, targeting undocumented migrants, the illegal migrants as he calls them. To help lead this, he's tapping Tom Homan, former head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, aiming to enforce immediate removals. But mass deportations come with major logistical challenges. They require huge detention facilities, trained personnel, transportation, and the cooperation of other nations willing to accept the deported individuals back. Now, on the legal front, Donald Trump wants to end his federal criminal cases in a flash. He stated he'll fire special counsel Jack Smith, who's been prosecuting 2 federal cases against him. But federal rules bar prosecution of a sitting president, and Trump hopes to leverage this to sideline these cases during his term. However, his state cases, like the one in New York, won't be under his direct control and could still pose legal hurdles. Then, of course, Donald Trump's talking about dismantling what he sees as the deep state. Trump wants to make it easier to remove thousands of federal employees he believes are working against him by reviving an old plan called Schedule F, which could strip job protections for many career government employees, effectively giving him more control over stays and who goes in the federal workforce. This shakeup would extend to officials in intelligence and security positions, areas that he openly has criticized in the past. On the foreign policy front, Donald Trump is aiming big with a claim that he could resolve the Russia-Ukraine war within a day's time. He's proposed bringing both President Zelensky and Putin to the negotiation table, insisting he could reach a peace agreement in 24 hours, which he views as essential to reducing U.S. involvement in the conflict. Of course, trade is another priority for Donald Trump, and he's promised new tariffs, especially targeting China and Mexico, as part of his economic strategy. These tariffs, he argues, would bolster U.S. manufacturing, protect U.S. jobs, and strengthen U.S. national security. He even suggested a potential 25% tariff on all imports from Mexico if their government doesn't curb what he sees an onslaught of illegal drugs and criminals entering the United States. And then there's the energy agenda. Drill, 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 as he puts it. Donald Trump wants to boost U.S. oil and gas production, and he's made it clear he'll roll back Joe Biden's climate policies and stop green energy projects he believes are unnecessary, especially those involving wind power. When it comes to education, Donald Trump plans to reverse protections for transgender students that were established under Joe Biden, and he's spoken about cutting federal funds to schools promoting critical race theory or other material he finds objectionable. And finally, Donald Trump is talking about pardoning individuals convicted for their roles in the January 6th Capitol riot. Donald Trump has called many of these individuals unbelievable patriots and has pledged to look at each case closely, promising pardons for many. It's an ambitious and controversial to-do list for any single-day office, and only time will tell what is feasible. But Donald Trump's vision for day one, if carried out, would certainly be a dramatic shift in a direction. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he confirmed today that he had approved pager attacks in September against Hezbollah strongholds in Lebanon, dealing a deadly blow to the Iranian-backed proxy. Netanyahu's spokesperson said the Israeli military initially declined to comment on the unusual tactic, which involved thousands of pagers exploding across Beirut's southern suburbs. The devices, the pager explosive devices, often used by Hezbollah as low-tech communication tools to avoid tracking or surveillance, began beeping before detonating, resulting in the 39 deaths and over 3,400 injuries in the pager blasts alone. Following these attacks, Taiwan announced it had completed an investigation into the incidents, asserting that no Taiwanese individuals or companies were involved in this particular attack. The pagers were previously linked to a Taiwan-based Gold Apollo company due to their brand name. However, Taiwan's government confirmed that the devices were manufactured by Frontier Group entity, a company unaffiliated with Taiwanese producers, although Gold Apollo had licensed the Apollo trademark for use. Now, Taipei prosecutors questioned Gold Apollo's founder and its sole employee, Teresa Wu, who had liaised with the Frontier but found no evidence of Taiwanese involvement or foreknowledge. Prosecutors noted limited information on Frontier's employees Wu communicated with, only identifying two by aliases T and M, presumably Frontier's head and sales director, respectively. The attack has escalated tensions, with Israel following up the targeting Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in an airstrike and launching further operations in southern Lebanon. Also, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he said that he has had 3 important talks with US President-elect Donald Trump over the past few days aimed at strengthening the Israel-US alliance. Benjamin Netanyahu emphasized their shared concern over the Iranian threat and discussed the potential for expanding peace between Israel and its neighbors.
בימים האחרונים אני שוחחתי 3 פעמים עם הנשיא הנבחר דונלד טראמפ. אלה היו שיחות טובות וחשובות מאוד. שיחות שנועדו להדק עוד יותר את הברית האיתנה בין ישראל לארצות הברית. אנחנו רואים עין בעין את האיום האיראני על כל מרכיביו ואת הסכנה שנשקפת ממנו. ואנחנו רואים גם את ההזדמנויות הגדולות שעומדות בפני ישראל בתחום השלום והרחבתו ובתחומים אחרים.
Even as these diplomatic channels get activated, at least dozens of people were killed and wounded in an Israeli airstrike on a house in Jabalia located in the northern Gaza Strip. This happened early on Sunday morning, according to the Palestinian medics. And it comes amid reports that Qatar is delaying its efforts to broker a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, citing a lack of willingness and seriousness from both these sides to end the ongoing conflict.
Dozens of people were killed and wounded in an Israeli strike on a house in northern Gaza early on Sunday, according to Palestinian medics. It comes as hopes for a ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel fade further after Qatar said it was stalling its mediation efforts until both sides show they're serious about ending the war. In video obtained by Reuters, a relative of the deceased says the building that was hit in Jabalia was sheltering dozens of his family members. They included children, all displaced by the war. They're simple people trying to make a living, minding their own business, and have no involvement with anyone, the man said. There were no immediate casualty figures given by the enclave's health ministry. The Israeli military said it struck a site in Jabalia in which terrorists were operating, adding that the details were under review. It also said it was looking into another report of a strike in Gaza City that's said to have killed a welfare ministry official along with 7 members of his family, including his wife and children. On Saturday, Qatar's foreign ministry said the country told Israel and Hamas 10 days ago, during the last try to reach a deal, it would stall its mediation efforts if nothing came of those talks. It said, quote, Qatar will resume those efforts with its partners when the parties show their willingness and seriousness to end the brutal war. The latest round of talks in October failed to produce an agreement, with Hamas rejecting a short-term ceasefire proposal. Israel has previously rejected some proposals for longer truces. Disagreements have centered on the long-term future of Hamas and Israel's presence in Gaza. Hamas wants an agreement that ends the war and a prisoner-for-hostages deal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war will only stop once Hamas is eradicated.
It's good to see you.
Qatar, along with Egypt and the United States, have been working for months on fruitless talks between the warring sides in Gaza. Any disengagement from that process could further complicate efforts to reach a deal. There was no immediate official response from Hamas or Israel.
Well, time for another commercial breather. But on the other side, we'll tell you about the far-reaching implication of the Israel-Gaza onslaught. Don't go anywhere.
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe. A new perspective awaits. B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Welcome back. The Dutch police detained over 100 pro-Palestinian protesters on Sunday after a court extended a temporary ban on demonstrations. The ban follows clashes on Thursday night after a football game that sparked concerns over anti-Semitic rhetoric. Authorities say the decision was necessary to prevent further unrest, but it has raised questions about balancing freedom of expression with public order.
Scuffles broke out as riot police in Amsterdam tried to break up a pro-Palestinian rally on Sunday. It came after a court extended a ban on demonstrations following clashes with Israeli soccer fans that have been described as anti-Semitic. Hundreds of protesters were defying the ban as they gathered in the Dutch capital's Dam Square.
Free Palestine!
They chanted slogans calling for an end to violence in Gaza. As police moved in and instructed protesters to leave, several people were seen being dragged away. One demonstrator collapsed and officers were seen tending to him. A court had ordered a 3-day ban starting Friday after attacks on supporters of Maccabi Tel Aviv following Thursday's match with Amsterdam's Ajax. Dozens of Israeli supporters were chased and assaulted. At least 5 of them were injured. Amsterdam Mayor Femke Halsema described the attackers as anti-Semitic hit-and-run squads. Some visiting Israeli fans burned a Palestinian flag and used pipes and rocks in clashes with opponents, according to a video and police report. On Sunday, the court extended the ban until Thursday. According to a Dutch news station, a local police chief told the court on Sunday that anti-Semitic incidents continued to be reported the night before. The Netherlands has seen a rise in anti-Semitic incidents since the Gaza war began in October last year.
Well, shifting our focus to Japan, where Japanese lawmakers have voted to keep Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba in power despite a rough few weeks. In a televised vote on Monday, Ishiba retained his leadership in the parliament after a close call in the lower house election last month. His coalition, which had a strong hold since 2012, lost its majority, putting him in a tricky spot. Ishiba, who's been in office since the 1st of October, called this snap election in a bid to strengthen his hold, but now faces a challenge of leading a minority government. Adding to the pressure, protectionist policies are expected to intensify as Donald Trump regains control in the United States, while tensions rise with both China and North Korea. The parliamentary vote itself highlighted Ishiba's fragile position. It even went to a rare second round for the first time in 30 years. But in the end, Ishiba secured his position with 221 votes in the 465-seat lower house, leaving his closest rival, former Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda, well behind. With no clear majority, Ishiba will now need to work closely with smaller opposition parties to move forward on his policy agenda and address rising domestic challenges like the cost of living. Meanwhile, world leaders have arrived at the big annual United Nations climate meeting, COP29, which commences from today in the hope to rein in rising global temperatures, which are making deadly events like the recent floods in Spain far, far worse. A key aim at this year's meeting in Azerbaijan's Baku is agreeing on how to get more cash to poorer countries to help them curb their planet-warming gases and to help them cope with the growing impacts of climate change. The US election victory of Donald Trump, a known climate skeptic, as well as wars and cost of living crisis are proving a distraction. And some important leaders are, well, not attending COP29. US President Joe Biden, China's leader Xi Jinping, France's President Emmanuel Macron, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Germany's Olaf Scholz, they're all going to be absent. Now, at the same time, Afghanistan's Taliban is going to be attending COP29 for the first time since their takeover in 2021. The Taliban in Afghanistan aims to enhance collaboration with the global community on environmental protection and climate change, highlighting Afghanistan's need for access to existing financial mechanisms for climate action and engage in discussions on adaptation and mitigation strategies. Hosts Azerbaijan, Baku, are also under intense scrutiny over their human rights record, as well as accusations that they are using the meeting to line up fossil fuel deals. Well, COP29 began with the aspect of why Valencia's floods were far worse than they actually should have been. Thousands of protesters filled the streets in Valencia to demand accountability for the regional government's handling of catastrophic floods that have claimed the lives of more than 220 people. Those are some of the scenes from Valencia. The demonstration was organized by over 30 civil groups as a response to what residents describe as delayed emergency action. Protesters claimed that Mazon issued an alert, well, too late, hours after water had already inundated villages across the region. Some local municipalities and even the University of Valencia raised alarms ahead of the regional government, with warnings starting as early as the 28th of October. While the protests remained largely peaceful, tensions flared as some demonstrators threw objects at police officers and clashed with authorities, leading to brief scuffles. In one of Europe's deadliest natural disasters in decades, the floodwaters devastated the Valencia province. Nearly 80 people are still feared missing.
We are alive, I don't know how, and the only thing I want to say is that this abandonment and institutional negligence must be held accountable. And even though I am exhausted, haven't slept at all, and am very anxious, I am here to demand answers because this is not normal.
The regional government didn't warn on time for the flooding, didn't respond on time, didn't get the help from the central government on time, and they just did everything that they could wrong. So we want them to quit and to let the new government to take over the responsibilities to clean up the mess that they left.
Shifting our focus here, Indonesia's Mount Levotobi Laki-Laki erupted once again on Monday, spreading panic amongst residents traumatized by recent volcanic explosions, which have already killed at least 10 people. It does look beautiful from afar, but really dangerous the more you get closer to it. The violent explosion ejected a giant plume of smoke and ash which rose up to 8,000 meters high in the sky. Authorities have imposed a 7-kilometer exclusion zone around the volcano on the island of Flores. More than 10,000 people have been forced to live in temporary shelters, even as the authorities have also issued warnings of potential flash floods and cold lava flows in the coming days. Panic around Levotobi Laki-Laki, the volcano in Indonesia that erupted yet again. Plume of smoke and ash rising up at least 8,000 meters high in the sky. A 7-kilometer exclusion zone that has been set up. Authorities doing the most they can and are also preparing the local communities for the future cold lava floods. And this next one is certainly interesting. Erno Rubik, inventor of the Rubiks Cube, is celebrating the 50th anniversary of creation of his spatial puzzle, which was originally designed as a teaching aid for mathematics but became a global craze soon enough. The puzzle, which has 43 quintillion possible combinations, has sold over 500 million units worldwide over the last 50 years. Over 500 million units in the last 50 years. The Rubiks Cube turns 50, ladies and gentlemen. Well, at 88, Plotarchos Ploriliakas proved that age is no barrier to determination by completing the 41st edition of the authentic Marathon of Athens in 6 hours and 31 minutes. Inspired by his son, the ultra-marathoner, he took up running in his hometown, Kastoria, in northern Greece, at the age of 73. And this marks his 12th time completing the iconic 42.195 kilometer, essentially a 26.21 mile race from the tomb of Marathon to the Pantheonic Stadium, cheered by his family. This year, he completed the race 18 minutes faster than last year. His training routine includes running 4 to 5 kilometers daily and up to 20 kilometers on the weekends. He doesn't drink or smoke. He doesn't indulge in excesses, eats a healthy, balanced diet, and believes everyone can do this if they really want to. Plotarchos Ploriliakas, 88-year-old man, proving age is no barrier, completes the 41st edition of the authentic Marathon of Athens in 6 hours and 31 minutes. Mind you, this is 18 minutes faster than his last year's time. And take a look at this. With his Farewell to Arms initiative, Alexander, a deserter from the Russian army who fought in Ukraine, aims to inspire other Russian soldiers committed to peace, to seek freedom and security. Here's an entire report. Take a look.
The first thing I felt was freedom. When I arrived here, I could finally breathe.
Alexander is beginning a new life in France. He arrived here after fleeing Russia's army. It was one of the hardest decisions of his life.
Desertion is considered betrayal, but in this case, it's the only right choice. A criminal case will be opened against you. Your house will be searched, your mother questioned. You are unlikely to come back to Russia in the nearest future. But it's much better than being killed or to kill.
Alexander was a liaison officer in the Russian army and was not directly involved in combat. Disillusioned with the army, he tried to quit several times in 2021. He was deployed for one final military exercise in February 2022.
On February 4th, we arrived in Crimea for military exercises, and on the 24th, Russia invaded Ukraine, and my brigade, including me, took part in this invasion.
Half a year later, he managed to leave the front line and flee. Without a passport, he ran to Kazakhstan, with his wife Irina alongside him.
When we left, it was very scary. You run away and realize that your future is uncertain and that they will search for you. But I didn't think twice about following him. I couldn't leave him alone.
Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion, more than 3,000 soldiers have left its army, according to a group called Go By The Forest, which helps deserters flee the country. Many, like Alexander, left for Kazakhstan. There they lived in fear of deportation and persecution. But determined to counter Russia's war in Ukraine, Alexander and several other deserters started a project, Farewell to Arms, encouraging their fellow soldiers to refuse to fight. Seeking asylum beyond Kazakhstan, their efforts in promoting peace helped convince officials in France to allow 6 deserters and their partners into the country. This unprecedented move followed a year of hard work by several human rights groups. Each case was checked by activists like Olga.
We can guarantee, first of all, to ourselves and to the European authorities that these people did not kill. We are sure that this really weakens the Russian army. And our goal is, in fact, that more and more people in Russia lay down their arms, leave the army, and leave Ukraine.
Here, in safety, Alexander and Irina plan to advocate for others who are still hiding.
It's just a drop in the ocean, and I hope that this precedent will open doors for other deserters.
For now, they are getting used to being able to sleep at night and are starting to make plans for their future.
I have a dream to travel through France, maybe even go overseas sometime, but that's still far away.
Well, with that, we've come to an end to this edition of Top Global Stories. We're going to see you again tomorrow. Top news and developments continue on News 9. Don't go anywhere.